Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a topic that's so crucial for any business that wants to thrive in today's world. It's vendor and supplier audits. We're going to uncover how these audits can actually help you not just, avoid problems, but really seize opportunities and gain a competitive edge. It's kind of like, when you're building a house. You wouldn't just trust any materials or contractor.
Right. You want to make sure everything's up to code,
Yeah.
built to last.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the same with your business. You got to make sure the companies you're relying on are, well, reliable.
That's such a great analogy. I mean, just like you wouldn't want a leaky roof or shaky foundation in your house, you don't want any weak links in your supply chain. And vendor and supplier audits are how you make sure everything is solid.
Okay, so let's break it down. What are vendor and supplier audits exactly?
Well, simply put, it's a way to systematically check up on the companies you work with to make sure they meet your standards for everything: quality, compliance, performance, the whole nine yards.
So it's like a health checkup for your business relationship.
Exactly. You're looking for any potential red flags.
Yeah.
Anything that could cause trouble down the line.
I see. But I think some people might hear audit and think, oh no, paperwork, bureaucracy, just a bunch of box ticking.
Yeah, I get that. But honestly, that's such a limited view.
Oh.
Audits are about so much more. It's about uncovering valuable insights that can help your business run smoother, even save you money.
How so? Give me an example.
Sure, think about it. An audit might reveal that one of your suppliers has, let's say, some really inefficient logistics. Or maybe they're marking things up unnecessarily, and that's costing you money.
Ah, hidden costs.
Exactly. Or, an audit might uncover compliance gaps. That could lead to big fines down the road if you're not careful.
Okay, so it's not just about finding problems. It's about understanding how those problems could impact your business and finding solutions.
You got it. And I'd even argue that audits can actually help you build stronger relationships with your vendors and suppliers.
Interesting.
Well, when you work together to address any issues that come up, it creates this sense of trust and transparency. And that's the foundation of any good partnership.
Makes sense. So it sounds like audits can be a win-win for everyone involved, but I'm curious, are there different types of audits?
Oh, absolutely. There are a few. You might conduct a financial audit, for example, to check on a supplier's financial health, make sure they can actually deliver on their promises. Or you might do an operational audit to look at their internal processes, see if there are any bottlenecks or inefficiencies.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, you have compliance audits to make sure everyone's following the rules and regulations.
Right, of course. So there's a lot to consider when planning and executing an audit. If someone's listening to this and thinking, okay, I'm ready to do this, where do they even begin?
Well, the first step is to really define your objectives. What do you want to achieve with this audit? What are your biggest concerns about this particular vendor or supplier?
Okay, so start with the why.
Exactly. Once you know your goals, you can figure out the scope of the audit,
Which is?
deciding which areas you'll focus on, what information you need, and what criteria you'll use to evaluate performance.
Got it. So define the why and the what.
Exactly.
Then how do you actually get that information?
That's the execution phase, putting your plan into action. Sometimes this means on-site visits to see things firsthand. Sometimes it's reviewing documents to check processes and compliance. And sometimes it involves interviews, talking to key people to get a deeper understanding of how things work.
So it's not just a quick phone call and a glance at some paperwork.
Not quite. A thorough audit takes time and planning, and a real commitment to getting the full picture.
I could see that. But, you mentioned earlier that audits can help build relationships. So does that mean you're working together with the vendors and suppliers throughout this process?
Ideally, yes. Involving them from the start can actually make the whole thing more efficient. By being transparent about your objectives, sharing your methodology, it encourages them to be open and honest too. And when you work together to address any issues, it creates this positive, collaborative environment. Everyone benefits.
Okay, so it's about building strong relationships, not just, ticking boxes.
Exactly, you got it.
So we've talked about planning and executing the audit, but what happens after it's done? What do you do with all that information you've gathered?
Well, that brings us to the reporting phase, and we'll dive into that right after the break.
Sounds good. We'll be right back.
All right, so the reporting phase, this is where you take all that information you've gathered and present it in a clear, concise way.
So like a written report.
Exactly. And in that report, you want to highlight both the good and the bad.
Okay, so you're not just pointing fingers.
Nope. You want to acknowledge the areas where the vendor or supplier is meeting or exceeding your expectations. That reinforces positive behavior, helps build that strong relationship.
Right.
And of course, you also need to address any areas where there's room for improvement.
And how do you do that?
The key is to be constructive. Focus on presenting the facts objectively,
Okay.
and then offer clear recommendations for how to address any issues.
So it's not just a list of complaints, it's like a roadmap for improvement.
Exactly. And remember, the audit process doesn't end when you hand over that report.
So what happens next?
You need to follow up, make sure those recommendations are actually being implemented.
And monitor progress over time.
Exactly. It's all about communication and collaboration.
That seems to be a recurring theme here.
It really is. Open and honest communication is essential for any successful vendor or supplier relationship.
So audits, when done right, can actually help facilitate that communication.
Absolutely. And ultimately, that leads to stronger, more resilient partnerships.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, I want to shift gears a bit and talk about the future of audits. Technology is changing so many aspects of business. So I'm curious, how is it impacting the world of vendor and supplier audits?
Oh, it's a really exciting time. We're seeing a lot of innovation in this space.
Like what?
Well, for example, artificial intelligence.
AI.
Yeah, AI and big data analytics. They're being used to analyze huge amounts of supplier data
And what's the goal of that?
to identify patterns and predict potential risks with a level of accuracy that we just couldn't achieve before.
So we're moving from a reactive approach to a more proactive approach to risk management.
Exactly. Imagine being able to foresee potential disruptions in your supply chain before they even happen.
Wow, that would be a game changer.
It really would. And businesses that don't embrace these new technologies, they're going to be at a disadvantage.
I can see that. But it's not just about having the technology, right?
You're right. You also need the know-how.
To use it effectively.
Exactly. Businesses need to develop the skills and expertise to interpret the data and translate it into actionable insights.
So it's not a magic bullet. It still requires human expertise and judgment. Now let's talk about another important trend. Sustainability. How is the increasing focus on sustainability and ethical sourcing impacting audits?
Well, it's becoming a major factor. Consumers want transparency. They want to know where their products come from, how they're made.
And if they're made ethically and sustainably?
Exactly. So audits are expanding to include assessments of environmental and social practices.
So it's not just about the bottom line anymore.
Right. Businesses are realizing they have a responsibility to consider the social and environmental impact of their supply chains.
And it goes beyond just doing the right thing.
Yeah. It can actually be good for business.
How so?
Well, consumers are more likely to support companies that share their values. So demonstrating a commitment to sustainability can actually give you a competitive advantage.
Makes sense. So win-win for businesses, consumers, and the planet. But how do you actually incorporate sustainability and ethics into an audit? What are you looking for?
It really depends on the industry and the company. But some common things we look at are, well, labor practices. Are workers being treated fairly? Are they paid a living wage?
Okay.
We also look at environmental practices. Is the supplier using sustainable materials? Are they minimizing their environmental impact?
So you're looking at the big picture.
We are. It's about making sure your vendors and suppliers are aligned with your company's values.
This is all great information. But for our listeners who are ready to actually start implementing more robust audits, what's the first step they should take?
I'd say start by taking a look at what you're already doing. Assess your current vendor management practices.
So like a self-audit, kind of?
Exactly. What's working, what's not, where are the gaps?
Okay, so take stock of the current situation.
Yeah, once you have a clear picture, you can start to, level up.
And what does that look like, leveling up?
Well, it might mean developing a formal audit process if you don't have one already. Or maybe you need to invest in some new technology.
To help gather and analyze data.
Exactly. The key is to make sure your approach aligns with your overall business strategy.
So have a vision and then build a plan to achieve it.
Right.
But I imagine some businesses might not have the resources or the expertise to do all of this on their own.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you know what? You don't have to.
Oh.
There are plenty of resources out there to help.
Yeah.
You could bring in a consultant who specializes in vendor audits. Or you could look for training programs to develop your internal expertise.
So there's support available for businesses that need it.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Good advice.
And remember, this is an evolving field.
What do you mean?
Things are constantly changing. New technologies are emerging. Best practices are being updated.
So stay informed,
Exactly. Never stop learning.
This has been a fascinating deep dive.
Right.
We've covered so much, from the basics of conducting audits to the exciting possibilities that technology and sustainability bring. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. Think about the vendors and suppliers that are crucial to your business. What's one thing you can do today to strengthen those relationships and safeguard your business for the future? Maybe it's implementing a more formal audit process, or exploring how AI can help you predict and mitigate risks. Or maybe it's incorporating sustainability and ethical sourcing into your vendor evaluations. Whatever it is, take action. Start building a more resilient and successful future for your business. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time.